Hey everybody, welcome to the Devil Doc Talk Show. Today we have Jimmie T. Smith from Concerned Veterans for America, and he is the coalition director and has a valuable experience and knowledge and wisdom behind what it takes to get things done for our community and the community at large. So I'm going to turn it over to Jimmie. Jimmie, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great, and it's a pleasure to be on today. Thank you very much for having me. And really, CVA is one of those organizations that is providing answers to the important legislators in Congress to make a difference. And as veterans, well, it's called Concerned Veterans for America, but we're actually more easily described as a group of veterans who are concerned for America. Of course, that's not a catchy name, so of course you go with CVA.
That's solid. I love the approach. When we connected on X, which I always tell people, hey, get your news from multiple sources, right? And me and you hit it off, and I was like, man, I really like what you're talking about. I like the way you guys are presenting it. I fell in love with the mission, and then I really loved the message, the way you just explained it, right? You can be concerned, but you kind of have to be actionable, and you have to be involved, right? So, how did you well, let's start over to the beginning. How did you become one affiliated with the military? Like, did you start young? Did you start old? How did that road look like?
Well, so I was a kid who, because I'm a little bit older, I was watching John Wayne, Audie Murphy, Vic Morrow, and other of those stars, and would go out into the woods with my friends and play BB gun wars. And do not recommend that, kids. Don't do that. It hurts. Uh, but we subsequently, at the age of 15, I went to a recruiter and I said, "Hey, I want to join the Army." He says, "Come back in 2 years." Only now as an adult do I realize he was being a smart aleck. Back then, I thought it was instructions. So at the age of 17, I went back to the recruiter and I said, "Hey, I want to join the Army." And it was a bit of a path to get into the Army because I dropped out of high school in the ninth grade.
Oh
With
wow.
my way of learning, I was really not doing well in education in that form. But then subsequently, so at the age of 17, I joined the Army, um, went to basic, AIT, talked myself into airborne school, not even knowing what it was. And then subsequently was stationed around the world and everything from the second ID to the 101st to the 82nd. Just had a great experience of being an infantryman. So I tell people I got to be a kid for 20 years. And then I got out and grew up and got a real job in a real life.
That is beautiful, man. I love that. That's a true hero's journey, having adversity, understanding your the way you learn. Like even the way you brought that up was so eloquent and just well put because that's kind of my experience. I didn't join when I was that young, but I did the 4 years of NJROTC and rolled over whatever and it was really interesting because a lot of young men, you're right, the Audie Murphy, the John Waynes, the heroes of yesteryear, right? And also the wars of yesteryear, what it was and coming back home from. And, there's been huge shifts, leaps and bounds from all these generations of eras of gentlemen and gentle ladies that have served our great country. Now, you kind of grazed over a lot of great talking points. How did you? What is the AIT? Because you're the second person in the past 2 days that brought up that, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Well, for the Army, it's advanced individual training. So the basic training teaches you all the common tasks for anybody who's in the military across the entire U.S. Army. But advanced
Gotcha.
individual training is specific to what your job skill is going to be. So as an example, as an infantryman, I did stuff that was specific to the infantry. If you're, of course, a medic, you'd go to I think it's out in Texas, and they do
San
the medic
Antonio.
San Antonio, and they do the medic training out there, and then so on and so on. So that is a specific aspect of what your MOS, military occupational skill, is going to be. And so in the Army, we just call it OSUT for people like me who stay at the same place, one unit site, one unit training. And then for others, they go to basic and then AIT at a different location.
Interesting. That's something that I know between the branches. Me and my buddy were literally just talking about licenses and certificates and recognition and transcendent credentials and all that jazz. And I know that it's a very different world within the Army, the
Yeah.
Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and now Space Force, right? And it's something peculiar because your job MOS, what was that to be able to get into like those airborne and those type of realms, because it's very foreign, unless you're like in the Navy. Like, no, you're not. Unless you're attached to Marines that are doing something really crazy, or the Navy guys, you're not jumping out of a plane unless you're just cargo. You know what I mean?
Well, I kind of have a unique story about going to airborne school, but in general, the whole aspect of whenever you want to go to a specialty school, there's only so many slots. The unit generally has to pay for it, or you have to apply for it. So, like special forces, you have to put in to go to, and then they
Okay.
have to, they tell you if you're eligible or not. But for my experience for airborne school, it was because I talk a lot. I was very naive, and I ended up talking my way into airborne school by literally going up to a line my friend was in and starting a conversation. And for those who know, I talk so much quite often, I don't realize what I'm doing as I'm talking. And the line got shorter and shorter. And when we got to the table, the drill sergeant says, "All right, come here, high speed," and walked up and asked me the questions, name, social, blah, blah, blah. Gave him all the information, handed me the packet, and told me when my class day starts. So when my friend also finished, he walks over. I go, "What's this for?" He goes, "It's for airborne school." I'm, "Great. What's that?" He says, "We're going to jump out of airplanes." So yeah, I talked myself into airborne school.
Oh my God, dude. So you're just kind of balls to the wall, young man. You go through that the AIT stuff, and now you're doing this, extra stuff. How did the path look for you as spent, you said 20, right?
Yes, sir. 20 years.
20 years. How did that kind of develop into, because that's a chunk of life. That's a big skip forward,
Yeah.
How did that path work out for you, and what was your experience in the Army like?
Well, I'm going to admit, I got into a lot of trouble, and it was never the kind of, "Hey, here's a bunch of Article 15 kind of troubles." I would challenge authority.
Mm.
So somebody would, you get those leaders who are leading for the wrong reason. They're leading because they're in charge, not because they're good leaders. And so I would buck against them quite often. I had a what we call counseling packet. So whenever you do at the end of the month, they do counseling. But if you do wrong, they do counseling. My packet was basically a novel. So
Wow.
I was constantly being called out for saying stuff or doing stuff or challenging authority. I had one NCO. I was left behind as a specialist to keep maintaining tracks, because at one point I was mechanized. All our chain of command left. I was a senior specialist, E4, told to stay there and clean. And some sergeant first class from another platoon told me to send my people somewhere. I was like, no, I was told to do this. "Well, I'm telling you to do that. I'm a platoon sergeant first class. You need to do what I told you." And so, because I have read the Army regulations, I'm the guy who reads the rule books. The rule books technically said that I was in charge, which equated me to the position of platoon sergeant. I referred him to the specific manual that said that, and the authority that I deemed under that was appropriate for me to tell him, "No, we're not going to do it." So let's just say for the next week, I cleaned the barracks after hours. Yeah, yeah,
Oh
lots of
man.
fun experiences with me bucking authority, but it provided me learning skills. So when I did become a leader, that I made sure never to treat my guys like that, and always think about treating the next generation of soldiers with firmness, with true authority, but also with a compassion to understand they're all human.
That is so true. I experienced, sadly enough, a very bad transition when I was asking for help for medical treatment after the deployment and all that other stuff, and lab school, and then I was a Nel Centro and all this stuff. But it was a very interesting experience, because I saw, and even getting to that point, exactly what you're saying. People, I feel, sometimes go after the biscuit before they're ready for it, right? That rank needs to be earned, and it's got to be a cognitive earning and a maturing type of thing. And some people, regardless of age, don't mature. They understand the lucrative aspects of leadership, but they don't become that genuine leader that could significantly provide, like you were talking earlier about your forces, being the person that supports them, that highlights them, and through their work and your support of it highlights the unit and their capabilities and what they're able to do and accomplish. And I saw that gravely dip during my experience. It was like, holy mother, what the hell? And so when I transferred and, I was doing the whole medical bout, I realized, like you were saying, trouble's not always bad. There's things
Yeah.
that are malicious and there's things that are malignant, and it's kind of like, well, if we have an insidious type of a disease, of a mentality, of a consciousness that derives this quality of leadership, what are we doing? And so that's kind of amazing. Me and you had a great conversation a few weeks back, and I was just blown away. A lot about the different perspectives, the military experience that you bring, and the wisdom the way you discuss it. Right, I really enjoyed that. So now, kind of moving it forward, that you bunk in the system, you learn. You're getting your ass handed to you, probably left and
Yeah.
right. and
Yeah.
as you
We
as
call
you're
it getting smoked.
getting
Yes.
smoked, got it, getting
Yeah.
smoked, and you're kind of growing through that phases. How, because that's a 20 long years. How did those years kind of lead into that last, and how did you, and what did you feel that was your biggest achievement as you were walking out?
Well, so, as it transitioned, I became a leader. One of the things I learned from the good leaders was if you do it right, it's almost like a family. So that was one of the big things that I always tried to make my troops understand. Hey, you have a voice in this. I'm not just going to bark an order at you without you having the ability to say something. Now, respectfully, properly, appropriately, in garrison especially, you could do that. When we were in the field, if I barked an order at you in the field, say on a maneuver or something like that, you were going to do as you were told, because there's no time to discuss the finer points of something. So, I really worked on that mentality. And I kind of came in with a lot of Vietnam veterans as leaders. And they also taught me a mental ruggedness that I really want to make sure I passed on. So when I became squad leader, I was able to do things what's called sergeant's time. Every week we would have sergeant's time. As part of that, I would go and write up an entire training plan. I'd have a supply request from a supply. I'd have a transportation request if need be from the XO. I did all these things, but then I would do stuff that really embedded a kind of learning so I could build the next generation. So as an example, I want to put in the right mindset to a set of troops when I was in Korea. So we're all running PT. It's just a squad, and I make them all, myself included, carry a sandbag. No big deal, right? You're going to run a couple miles with a 40-pound sandbag. No big deal. So as we're running, I stopped them. I said, all right, you've been hit in combat. Somebody else take the sandbag. Just continue your run without the sandbag behind us. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
now the formation is down one person and we're running and somebody's got two sandbags. Go a little bit further and said, all right, now you're a casualty. Somebody else has to carry the sandbag. And so we get running. And of course, by the time we get back, there was three people who were not carrying sandbags, and there was six of us that were. And the lesson that I was giving them was, you have to stay healthy. You have to do the right things, because if you don't, somebody else is going to carry that load. And when somebody else carries that load, it makes us less effective. And nothing like a good heavy coat of sweat to teach that lesson to people. And those are kind of things that you talk about, like what is some of the things I left behind. When I came out of the military, I tried to somewhat track the people who were under me. I have a number of people who end up raising to the rank of first sergeants and sergeant majors, and not necessarily because of me, but I'd like to think maybe I put a little of that mindset into their head that helped them kind of think differently about leadership and think differently about, how to actually be a modern military and do things.
That's so solid. That's one of the biggest things that I reflect back on as well. I only did my 7 in a couple of months, 7 and a change, right? But that hardship transfer and the medical reasons why I got out were very illuminating to why and how important it was what I did. That transference of skills, the dynamic of craftsmanship, the ability to actually provide the competencies, right, and qualifications. And then the thing that I've noticed is the quality of not just in-depth training, but cross training, where everybody, and this is my optics, right? I haven't been in for quite some time. Everybody seems to just be like, that's not my job. That's not my job. That's not my job. And the buck keeps passing until, well, even though it is your job or not, the way we enforce and look at legislature and policy, you're not really conforming to any form of law or morals or integrity. You're kind of just skating through and getting a paycheck and then saying, well, look what I did, you know? And
Yeah.
that's something that I've noticed throughout the years is more and more reflecting, more and more passion, meeting more and more gentlemen and ladies like yourself, where the people that are dedicated to creating that path forward, right? And leveraging those adversities by saying, hey, that was a horrible time, right? It was
Yeah.
really hard, really bad. But, you know, by the grace of God, I say, it highlighted a lot of lessons learned and opportunities to take now. So when we're talking to about that, what we leave behind, I find that super important because as a genuine leader, there's got to be like you said, you follow up with the people and you're proud of not your accomplishments, but theirs. And it's kind of that I am a father, so I see as my father and my children type of, you know, relationship. And of course, you know, we can go higher to a different father and a higher power and all that good stuff. But that relationship is what I always found in genuine good quality leaders. Not saying it had to be a woman or a man, but it just that mentality of providing first, not necessarily saying you sacrifice yourself and all this, but like you were saying, keeping yourself healthy enough and moving far enough so the whole team makes it to the end. And that's because casualties, sadly enough, casualties are going to happen, whether that's on the field or in garrison, whether that's a rolled ankle, mental health, whatever's going on. You know, this is the aspects of consideration that is in the totality of the job, and that's powerful. So when you were transferring out, right, and you left a great impression on these gentlemen and ladies that you served with, how did you transfer those skills into the civilian world? What did that look like for you?
Well, I'll admit it was a little bit difficult, but I first got into a job at a decorating warehouse, and as part of that job, it was the decorating warehouse manager. There was nobody managed. It was just me. And I walked in there and it was an absolute nightmare. Stock was not properly categorized. It was not properly listed. They weren't tracking who was coming in and out, getting stuff. So I took the mindset of leadership and said, all right, hold on a second. I put up dry erase board, blocked out where each bracket of stuff was. So you had carpet, you had tile, you had linoleum and stuff. And although it's trivial, when I was done with it, you knew whenever you walked in exactly what was where. And then I had to tell the people that were coming in and grabbing stuff, you will no longer touch my stuff. This is my stuff. And they'd be like, no, I put in the order. I said, that's right. And it's in my building. It's my stuff. You get your order when I say it is. And the civilians were not very happy about that because I was using a military mindset. But then within weeks, it wasn't, I had to go look for it. It was, they would show up. Oh, here's your roll of carpet, or here's your box of tile. And they start to see where using the military skills that I had made it better. But it was challenging because, again, coming into a non-structured civilian job really was mentally fatiguing. Then I came home to Citrus County, Florida, where I live, and ended up working for a couple different jobs. One of which was AC, doing AC in construction phase, right? So the ducts and all that stuff. Well, one day I was up about, I don't know, 20 feet on a lift, and it was the end of the day, and I was putting a very large, I think it was 6x4 duct together. So I had the two panels coming together, and I had it all strung up, and I want to put the bolts on each four corners. And my boss tells me, no, come down. I say, hey, boss, it won't take but a little time. He goes, no, we're done. We need to leave. Everybody's in the van already. They're waiting on you. I says, listen, I really would feel it's so much safer if I just go ahead and put these four bolts in. So eventually he's like, no, come down now. He's the boss. I do it. And I go, that's just not as safe as it could be. I'd like to have stayed and made it safe. He goes, I get it, but they want to charge overtime for every minute they're sitting in that vehicle waiting past, the particular hour as we drive home. And let me tell you, I was irate. So I get in that van, Nobody said anything to me because I got in that van. I looked at every single one of them with this eye of, go ahead, I dare you to say something. And we had a very quiet ride back
Yeah.
because that kind of work ethic to me is, not everybody does that, but I'm more of the, when you're working, you put everything into the job and you make sure that job is completed up to the best of your ability. It doesn't mean you're great at your job. It doesn't mean that, you're always going to be right about everything, but, did you try to make it as good as you could? And when I had, some workers like that around me that were not trying to do right, it was mentally difficult. It really was. I really did struggle with not saying or doing things that I'd like to have said.
Yeah. I could totally see that dissonance of trying to absorb the cultural differences. That culture shock hit me hard like a ton of bricks, and it still does every day that I have to, sadly enough, I mean it, sadly enough, utilize the Veterans Affairs in and of itself at all. It's it's that mentality, like you're saying, that hey dude, this is overtime, supervisors this, them that. The workers genuinely don't want to put the extra effort because it's not going to lead to incentivized outcomes. Nobody wants to be used at the end of the day, right? And that's kind of the premise of all these rights and regulations and employee stuff. But when you look at the outcome, like what if, and this is a what if, something happened where that thing did shake loose and fell down. It destroyed whatever you worked on the whole week, the whole day, however long it took. I don't even know what it looks like with those big things. I know they're huge. But when I'm looking up at it and I go, what if, right? This what if could have led to a lot. And all it would have took was what? Maybe another 45 minutes, if that. And I go, that's the worst part of a lot of circumstances that we find ourselves in this current society, right? The way we're living our lives, the leadership qualities, again, going back to the integrity aspects, right? Man, that's gotta, I mean, honestly, it just sounds like a horrible fucking day. Like, I'm just like, look, if we can say, hey, one thing is this and another is that, like, I can get it. If you're like a restaurant and you have hours, look, it's, come on, let's be easy. This is food service, right?
Yeah.
But if it's heavy equipment, we got to put the best foot forward here, right? Training, qualifications like truck drivers, even licensed drivers. Jesus, California. Wow. What I can say is it leads to a lot, and it's we try to pinch nickels and dimes and we create $100 problems. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It just it is. It's horrible. So as you hopefully you didn't stay too long there, right? I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah. So the life was actually not always bad. I because of my work ethic and everything, and my bosses pull me aside and tell me, "Don't tell anybody, but you got to pay raise." Right. I didn't know that in the civilian sector you don't talk about how much you make because everybody makes the same in the military, right?
Yeah.
And nobody talks about it because we all know what everybody makes. And in the civilian sector, they're like, "No, don't tell anybody what you make." So, I kept getting pay raises. Life was pretty good, but ended up doing several other jobs, ended up becoming a security officer after that. That was a very fun thing because I got to go out and run and gun every once in a while at training, or just sit in a tower and overlook the horizon as I wait for the herd to attack. But I still had the M4 and protective mask and a job that was authorized the use of lethal force. So that was pretty interesting. But subsequent to that, I then got involved in politics, and that was a whole different crazy world.
So you come from kind of in a big full circle, a brief history on yourself, right? And I can't wait to learn more, especially over a nice cigar, right?
Yes.
Those Mayflowers look delicious.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look them up and try to see if I can get some. But when you're doing this whole full circle, and you've gone back to the infantryman, that mentality of actuality, tangible outcomes type of action. And then you integrate into politics. Like I'm I am. My wife hates me because not hates me, but she does hate this aspect of me. She's open about it. She's like, "Hey, he won't shut up about politics,
Yeah.
things, narratives, agendas, the way you could do it better." I'm heavily opinionated, as cord to my father and my mother and everybody in between, especially when it comes to water in California. And
Right.
clearly, it's kind of important. We just learned
Right.
that, right? So,
Yes, absolutely.
that was a hard one. Go figure. What works for fires? Water.
Water.
Oh shit, go figure. So for you, how did that work out? What did that look like? How did these first steps end up? Because I notice a lot of people are timid to integrate, especially into politics. But one, somewhere where it's going to be high vis. So it's like, I'm target on my back, right? And so how did you walk that path? How did that kind of work out for you? How did you run into it or walk into
Well,
it?
so I kind of have this this great ability to be apathetic about what people care, right? I just it was
That's
not
solid.
good in the military, right? Because I got chewed out a lot. But then as a civilian, it was wonderful because I'd go out there and I would present my talking points and what I believe, my values, and I didn't really care what they thought about it. I only cared if they want to engage on it. Right. So
Hmm.
apathy about, I don't have a hurt feeling over somebody going, you're stupid. That's a bad opinion. So I just disregard that. But when somebody wanted to interact with me and debate and discuss something, I enjoyed it greatly. Right. Just think about when we're in the military and you're around either on break time with your people, everybody's, BSing with each other and you'll rag on each other and stuff. So
Oh
I've
yeah.
gotten this really nice, tough skin. But getting into politics, it was not easy because, again, I was just some guard in a guard tower at that time, and I decided to run. Had no money because I just was building a family, so I had no real money to my name, and decided to do this against a 25-year incumbent. And everybody was telling me, no, you can't do it. It's impossible. He's got name recognition and everything. And I went everywhere. I talked to everybody. I was unafraid to just walk up to anybody, no matter what they're doing. We'd go to the festivals and kids are licking ice creams. I walk up to their parents and start talking to them as the kids are, screaming and hollering and driving everybody crazy. I didn't care.
Nice.
I'd talk to them anyway because I wasn't, I wasn't afraid to engage, and that helped. And I subsequently I defeated the incumbent, and it hadn't been done in the same party in like 20 years. So this was something unusual to happen. And then when
That's
I got
solid.
into it, yeah, when I got into it though, and got into the state house, I have to tell you that same mentality really benefited me. So I had a great staff. First of all, don't ever get into politics unless you get a great staff behind you. So I had a great staff. I get up there and I start going to the people who don't agree with me first. And everybody's like, "Oh, don't mind, don't go to them. They're not going to vote for you." I go, I'm going to go to them anyway. So I talked to my staff. I was like, okay, here's the blueprint. And I 100% agreed. You go to the people who don't agree with you. You do two things. One is maybe you can get some of them to either agree with you or disagree less. Two, this is the military mindset. You get great intel. You know exactly what they're going to talk about when it comes up to committee hearings and questions on committee hearings. And then you're able to just mic drop all the answers to everything that they're going to ask because now you've had days and days of study to get ready for it and things like that. So I became a very strong speaker on the floor, a very strong speaker in committees, somebody who was, as I was told, I was black and white. There was no gray in my decisions. I was either for you and I could explain it, or I was against you and I could explain it. And it was great because in Florida, we kind of do things different. We actually have in the Florida House a very nice lunchroom, right?
Oh, nice.
Lunchroom, dinner room. And it's only for members, but they all go there. So we're literally sitting down with somebody who's like, man, your bill is stupid. Why are you doing this? And then you have a conversation. You're eating breakfast. Breaking bread together is the most important thing you can ever do, especially if it's with somebody who disagrees with you. So I was
Absolutely.
able to do that, and highly successful. Got a lot of good bills passed. Everything from service animal legislation to fighting fraud, waste, and abuse and entitlement system to one of the most important things was I ended up being recognized for my military service. Maybe it was the camouflage curtains, my BDU blouse, and my beret, and a big old set of airborne wings on the wall. So everybody would come to me for
Nice.
veterans issues, and I then became the first the vice chair and then subsequently the chair of the Veterans Military Affairs Subcommittee. And that allowed me to guide policy. And as soon as I got elected, or as soon as I got appointed, the chief of staff for the committee calls me. He wants to introduce himself. I'm like, great. I'm still this kind of like hyperactive kid. I'm like, great. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do no giveaways, no freebies, because that's not helping veterans. Let's just get them jobs. It's Governor Scott. Jobs. We're going to make the Veterans Committee a jobs committee. And we aligned a lot of regulations for occupational license. So if you're in the military, you'd be able to come out and get a job. So I was able to take my military skills and abilities, my willingness to engage anybody. And of course, you learn that in the military too, right? Because everybody makes a friend as soon as you show up to a new unit.
Oh, absolutely.
And then last but not least, the answers-driven concept that comes from the military, which is, hey, what are you going to do next, right? Hey, high speed, that's great. What are you going to do now? So that kind of mentality allowed me to be successful and served 6 years in the Florida House and really loved it.
That's amazing. So you started in the House and you kind of went through this phase of discovery, right? You're integrating and you're seeing these different players, so to so to speak, but also like you're saying. And honestly, let's look at politics as that, because the more and more we get emotional behind people's decisions, the more and more it does create full out negative outcomes. Like right now, I'm not saying people are nuts, but I'm sorry, okay? It's just right, to focus. You did 7 or 6, I'm sorry, I couldn't recall.
6 years. But your point is really good there, because right now, especially, everybody is tearing each other apart because they see what is in front of them on this step, not what is in front of them as far as the journey is going to go with what's going on. And quite often, the instant reaction is the wrong reaction.
Exactly. The emotional mind isn't logical, right? And when we have this guttural or even fear-based reactions towards things, right? I find it to be where the gold nuggets tend to be, right? These complex systems, and people are asking, why are numbers like this? Why is suicide this high? Why are drug abuses this? Why is that? What is the answer? Why are we having such low engagement numbers within the VA? Why are we having low engagement period with mental health? What's going on here? What are the relatives? What are the constants? And what are the weird little spontaneous flicks, you know? And if we're hyper focused on managing things on a level that are non-incorporating, right? Where it's, hey, we don't give a shit what a veteran has to say. I'm an administrator. I don't give it. I get paid regardless, right? And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I go, that's the pain point that I love what CVA is saying, is where when you guys discuss things, it's not from a aspect of, here's just a general idea, let's go throw shit to a wall and see if it sticks. You know, it's good for entertainment. I do it all the time. But when it comes to policy and politics, we need to be a little bit more, again, pragmatic and logical in our approach. You say apathetic, and I go, yes, your sensation towards others perceiving you, but you're very passionate towards the goal. And that's the beautiful thing about genuine leadership is, hey, I can get a tomato in my face, but if this briefing gets 10 guys in a room where they finally get the treatment they need, so be it, you know? And that's the highlight that I love about the trajectory of our conversation so far. It's simple. You spend the 6 years there in the House and you see these outcomes kind of come into fruition and developing. And how did the next steps kind of coalesce, so to speak?
Well, I ended up running for a local office, county commission, and spent 4 years investing my time and energy and trying to improve my local community. And sadly, my reelection didn't go well. Again, I'm a man of faith, and I think God put me on the path that I'm supposed to be on, because during the same time I was running for reelection and campaigning, I get this call for this job. Concerned Veterans for America. I already knew what they were. I had talked to the person who had suggested I apply for the job, had actually held the job previously, and he recommended I call or I reach out and apply for the job. And at first I didn't. I'm running a campaign. I'm a county commissioner. I'm busy. And God kept kind of nodding, going, hey, you might want to check this out. Checked it out. Go, no, that's not what I'm looking for. And then God nodded again to say, hey, check this out. I applied. I ended up getting it. So I'm running for reelection. I am going through the process, get hired on as a coalition director for Concerned Veterans for America. It's during the pandemic. So my world is just like, okay, great. I'm trying to work on this local issues about the pandemic and jobs being shut down and so much chaos. I'm now the coalition director. I'm trying to help learn what my job is and how to build coalitions to drive what Concerned Veterans for America is working on. And it was absolutely crazy. So when I lost, it was actually one of the greatest blessings I've ever had. Other than, my wife and my daughter,
That's beautiful.
it was a wonderful thing. God said, okay, this is the path I want you to walk. And I've been doing this now for just under 5 years. And it's been wonderful because not only am I able to engage on policy, they basically, for the military, for the infantry, we're given left and right sectors of fires within a fighting position. Anything in front of you, you could shoot at. Don't shoot outside left or right sector. You'll shoot friends, right? So the mindset is still that with Concerned Veterans for America. Here's your training. Here's your legal requirements. Here's your mission and purpose aspect, and then create what you want to create to build energy to elevate CVA and make sure our PIs, our priority initiatives, are taken serious by local communities, by state communities, state leaders, and by members of Congress. And they gave great latitude, and I've grown from that. I made some mistakes when I first got hired on and stuff like that, but they're the type where when you make a mistake, kind of like in the military, it's okay. Did you learn from it?
That's one of the most important things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And see, that's the thing about failure I find in a lot of politics is everybody's too afraid to kind of take a punch. You know what I mean? You got to be okay to take a punch. Like, this is the world of it. Me and another guest were talking just the other day, Brent, about police officers and firefighters and policies that say you won't go into harm's way. And that really kind of erodes the trust that society puts into these positions of authority or servitude, right? Could you imagine a fleet of the top biggest, highly trained military guys that could jump anywhere and do anything, but they go, no, we're not landing there. It's dangerous. Like, what are you talking about? So that's really awesome to hear that you had the vision and that you see that perspective that, sometimes the way things don't work out, it actually is working out for the better. That's beautiful. And so how you've been as a coalition director, I'm going to sound like a dumbass right now. What does that mean? Because
at different levels, it means different things. So a coalition director for some organizations will bring in groups of organizations that are aligned with their core value and maybe get them to come up to either to the state, if it's at the state level, or maybe get them to sign on to a letter or things like that. So that's the way some of the coalition directors do it in some organizations. But for Concerned Veterans for America, we're a national level organization. So nobody's going to fly up and be able to run into a committee meeting and testify. That's just not how it works. So what I've done instead was to elevate CVA by connecting with the right groups, connecting with the right leaders, building relationships with groups like the VFW's, American Legion, MOA, the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs, because at one point predominantly I was just working Florida. Now I work in various states. And as part of that, though, it was just making sure that we had the right amount of influence to be able to carry forward the message. This is the legislation that's important, and you should pass this legislation because this is going to be what's best for not only veterans. And that's one of the things that quite often people misconstrue about our organization. We're not working for veterans. And I know that sounds weird as Concerned Veterans for America, but for America. Everything we literally do has one goal, and that is for America. So we work every single day. We get up, we, figuratively put on our uniform, and we go to work for America. So like we served in the country for America. So what we do in policy, as an example, when we talk about fixing healthcare, we're the veterans are the canary in the coal mine. If they don't fix our healthcare, think about what might happen to the nation's healthcare system being pulled in the direction of, say, the VA. So we're the canaries in the coal mine. So we use our experiences in the VA to say, hey, look, this is what bad healthcare looks like. Let's not do this. And in that, we specifically help veterans for that reason, but it's for a larger picture of helping America. And then we move into foreign policy. We are right now talking about the Tax Cuts Job Act. So we're talking about prosperity, and we're talking about ending endless wars. So we don't have everybody, hating us around the world, and we needlessly send men and women into areas to get shot at and wounded and have to come back to a broken VA healthcare system.
My guy, I am just like, look, I was kind of a little special Eddie right there on the name too. The way that you're like, no, CV4A, okay, bud.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, I get it. And now, then it finally clicks when you're like foreign policy. I'm like, okay, I get it, because it's important to do that. A lot of people's considerations, and we could talk about a multitude of poor experiences and all that stuff, but it's kind of the abnormalities, right? The consistent is bad, and the fluctuation is, oh, I really enjoyed my care from the VA, and I'm like, okay. And that's the unique perspective for a lot of us, but it is a centralized healthcare organization. It is the biggest on the planet as far as I could think of. It's $360 to $80 billion a year now. It's projected to go to about $500 billion in the next few years. What are we doing with that money if we are having veterans killing themselves in the parking lots, lighting themselves on fire in front of the foyer? It's like there's weird, funny things going. Orgies? Like, come on. What do we? No, don't come on. Like somebody in the VA is gonna be like, hey, you're getting me aroused. No, don't come on.
Dear Lord.
Don't. What I can say, VA, is look, there's a lot of ways to get it right? And CV4A is a great way to have those conversations where it's like, hey, look at one aspect of community care, right? If I have a multitude of experiences. I've written the VAOIG, the Wounded Warrior Battalion in Quantico follows up with me on things. They're amazing. I'm trying to give everybody shout outs, all the social workers, the White House hotlines, the rural VA representatives, and even the care coordinators for the comprehensive care program, right? What I can say is, even with all of those organizations and people, and I've talked to all of the ones that I've engaged with, like on a personal level, not just, hey, I'm a patient, but on a personal level, one of the most recent ones was the HISA grant. And it was a breaking point for me because I already had a horrible experience after I had a bad fall in late August, early September. And it took months to get a basic primary care appointment. And it got to the point where I didn't walk for about 3 weeks. I was just locked in the bed. And I was going to do the negative thing again that we always talk about in the veteran community, which is suicide. Right? We can't shy away from it. That's what the words are, right?
Yeah.
And in leadership, we have to be able to say, we're not going to say, unalive yourself. Like, that's really, are we children? No, it's called suicide, right?
Yeah.
And if we have these conversations at length, well, why, Joey? Why did you feel that way? You've been doing this thing very well. You're trying really, you're doing all this good stuff. And I go, because none of it matters. When I fell again and I couldn't walk and my wife's lifting me up and wiping my ass and helping me out, right? I don't see that as I'm anything valuable to this planet, especially them, right? But as I kind of forced myself into this new perspective of having a doctor literally tell me in the office that she has it worse than me, instead of getting angry about it, I go, well, what if she does?
Yeah.
Let's say, what if this poor thing is so doped up on morphine like I used to be that she's forcing herself into practice just to afford whatever medical bills she has? And then she goes, well, it's hard for you veterans because you have a PPO and a HMO. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I don't. I'm a PNT, that's the only acronyms I've heard lately. But, I don't know what you're saying, lady. And all of these confusing aspects of how the Veterans Affairs offers care. Because a lot of people don't even know that there's two organizations within the admin. Not admin, but the VA Affair, right? Which is the Veterans Administration and the Veterans Health, right?
Actually, so there's three. So there's
Three,
the
okay.
Veterans Health Administration, the veterans portion that deals with education, and then there's the portion of the VA with education and things like the mortgage, the benefits like that. And then there's the last one, which is, of course, the funeral benefits and stuff like that. So those are three separate sections, but the VA Health Administration is the only one you ever hear people screaming about. But like you described, a lot of good people a lot of bad system. And one of the things that we're proud of at Concerned Veterans for America is that we have basically been at the lead of providing answers. So you had the choice program after 2014. Well, let me back up. In 2014, you had the 2 waiting list issue at the VA at Phoenix, Arizona. And in that facility, they actually had a wait list that they gave to Congress, said, oh, look, everything's fine. Here's the wait times. Then they had the real wait times, which was months and delays and all kinds of things. So they were lying to Congress. So from that, our organization and others worked with Senator John McCain and some other people, and they created what's called the Choice Program. That Choice Program was a card where you can just basically go see a doctor. It wasn't very good, didn't work very well. Subsequently, they came up with what's called the Mission Act. So in 2018, then President Trump signed the Mission Act, which created the community care program. So that started to work really well. Then COVID hit. Then the VA under President Biden, Secretary McDonough, basically was like, well, too many veterans are using community care. We're going to have to relook the access standards. And then this whole cacophony of things where the VA literally was trying to prevent you and all of us veterans from going outside of the VA. They was making them travel all across the state. You from the Key West, if you're 100%, you get free dental. So they would drive from Key West for 4 hours all the way up to Miami to go to the Miami dentist. 2 things. 1, they passed dentists on the way. 2, they made it like no big deal. We can either give you a ride ourselves or we'll reimburse you for your travel. Like that makes it better, right? So,
like
we're
that's not another system that they suck at, right? Like,
right.
Come on, kid.
Right. Well, but then I'll give you another example. So the VA controls that healthcare system that I just described as broken that we have been consistently working to improve. Mm-hmm. But there's this other healthcare system that comes under DOD. It's called TRICARE. I have TRICARE. Yes. I go to a doctor. They pay the bills. My approval for, I had gallbladder surgery. No problem. I had this issue. No problem. I have a 17-year-old daughter who had to go see a doctor. At the age of 17, she makes her own appointments. She doesn't have to come to dad. Dad just needs to be there if it's one of those appointments that you need an adult at. So my 17-year-old, it's so simple. She can make her own appointments. But then you have the VA healthcare that's currently broken coming out of the previous administration under Secretary McDonough, where veterans can't get appointments. They're sending them across the nations, across state lines. The wait times are building up and getting longer, not shorter. And they're intentionally, there's a video out there, literally the undersecretary for the VA Health Administration is literally on video saying, press the easy button less on community care. Literally telling the administrators underneath him, don't send them out, press the easy button less. So I have my healthcare under TRICARE that I just go to a doctor. So easy. A 17-year-old kid with no experience in anything can do it on their own. But then there's this experience where we have veterans who literally put their lives on the line for care to a system that's supposed to be their promise from America to take care of them, that you can't get appointments. And the appointments take long times, get canceled. They send you across state lines. And the overall result is that we know which system is better.
I mean, honestly, you're nailing it right on the head, right? I told you a little bit about like when my getting out was, and my then pregnant wife, we left without any kind of care. It was by the grace of God that Cigna picked us up when she started working for San Diego Hospice. Whoop, whoop, shout out to them. It's now Scripps, right? But the beautiful thing was we made it work, right? And as I learned and went through these adversities in this, this path, what I learned was, sadly enough, there was a better answer, and it was being gate kept, and it was being lied about. Like when I started trying to use community care, they sent me to a liquor store thinking that it was a pain management doctor because the dude used to practice there 5 years ago. So I'm not saying they're intentionally doing things and not refreshing reports or not making it easy for doctors to apply for community care to be a vendor. I'm telling you, that's what they're doing. And you just said it. They're saying, do that. So again, it's one of those manipulative like marketing and promotional things. Of course, people have been rung up with fraud, but it's the VA. You can't even get a tort claim through when you die. So it's like, good luck. And I've worked with a lot of folks, much like yourself through my experience, where you have this insight of both ease and access and absolute horror stories. And I go, the saddest part about it is when we have the opportunity, and I'm talking to another gentleman, he's the executive chief experienced veteran officer here in San Diego. He's a great guy, and I told him I'd put his name out there. His name's Bob Bott and Ron Stark of the San Diego 1 VA committee, and Ray Flores with the county supervisors district, and Jim Desmond, who's now running for Congress. All of these guys, including Daryl Issa and the VA OIG, and all of these people, even the director of VISN 22, I'm pretty sure is aware of me at this point now, and the director of the caregiver program. I've talked to so many people in so many different ways over my 12 years of doing this thing that saved my life in a way where I could create things artistically and not kill myself. And I tell people this honestly and earnestly. That's the reason why I told you I love podcasting, dude. Yeah. It's something where you can really practice those therapies. You can really put the best modalities forward and say, hey, you know, if Jimmie can do this, and Jimmie says, hey, his 17-year-old daughter, you know, I'm Joey, and I'm just a slightly, you know, disabled veteran with a ding, right? But that's okay. What I can say is if I can point the fingers to how we can have, again, we're going back to the nickel and dimes. We're pinching nickel and dimes to cause, and they end up causing $100 problems, right? Well, now we're talking about lifelong problems. We're literally getting veterans to commit suicide in the foyer, in their cars, in their parking lots. There's just rampant fraud and abuse, and yet the microscope falls on us all the time. That's it. And I'm all for it. Hey, microscope me up, bro. I had to bend over and show my colon to a doctor to get in. Surprisingly enough, you don't have to bend over and show your colon to get out. Even though I had an ass surgery, that would have gotten me, 30 whatever percent? Yeah, I'm positive, but I didn't even get that rated because of the headache. And the same thing with the driving stuff that you mentioned. What is it called? Paid travel? I can't remember.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I never even filed for that shit. I live an hour away from everything. The why? I'd love to know what your why is. I'll tell you mine.
My why is very simple. It's, you know, so I live in Citrus County. I would go to Gainesville. It's an hour and a half drive up there. I just didn't even want to do anything with it more than what I had to. Now they did. I ended up having an ulcer because of, you know, being a skinny guy in a big man's army. And subsequently I had surgery on that, and, you know, it was completely covered. And again, service connected. They fixed it. It cost me nothing. But also the whole aspect of paying me to, you know, to drive up there and back, I felt like it was just, you know, part of what I should put in as part of the process to get my care, right? Because I'm getting surgery, right? No big deal.
And those are two big takeaways, because that is what I find most important in the veteran community is this ethical and integrity that exudes abundantly amongst the flock, if you will, right? I don't take it because I don't need it. But number one, I don't need the fucking headache of trying to get anything from these people as it is. Hisogrant, like I was telling you earlier, denied, not because of need, not because of medical necessity, but because I have a walk-in shower already that's tiny. I had to get it made, and I had to get and rails and a seat. And they go, no, we could have just given you a shower chair. It's like $35, so literally go sit on a stick and rotate. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And the worst part about it was the lady was such a sweetheart, okay? She's the director of the program there in Oceanside. And I go, look, her heart was crying for me because she's bound by whatever her bosses is saying. This is the qualifying, whatever it is, technicalities. Everybody I talk to, the caregiver support coordinators, the caregiver program, everybody you name that knows about the HISA grant, or that was the one we applied for, so that's it, the HISA grant. And I go, cool. They said, no, you can do this. This is you qualify. Yep. And she tells us, well, you know, if anybody would have just asked you, do you have a walk-in shower? You didn't have to drive an hour and a half and an hour and a half. So 3 hours on the road, an hour hearing me telling you no, and all this bullshit, right? And I go, yeah, that would not have, it would have been a better experience, because my poor wife is crying. I'm crying. I'm like, dude, we're not going to be able to get this paid back and all this horrible things. I'm out 24 grand. It's horrible. I don't know anybody that can do that stuff because of a medical necessity and not be kind of set back by it, you know? Yeah. So after, though, I didn't see it just as my negative personal experience. And no sucks regardless of what it is, right? Even if it's just a simple primary care appointment. What I can say is this no really hurt. And I told a lot of people about it, and they go, why? I go, simply because it's not in their SOP to say, do you have a walk-in shower before you apply for this grant? It takes 30 seconds, okay?
Yeah.
And she said to me in the office, in the meeting, I've been talking to my fucking bosses to get this fixed for a long time.
Yeah.
She implied like a year or two, and I'm like, so let me get this straight. You're putting veterans, disabled, severely disabled veterans, through this whole rigmarole and this cycle of whatever you want to call it, right? I call it, just complete abandonment of integrity, but,
Yeah.
anybody else can say whatever they want. What I can say then is, well, how is that such a simple fix that they don't give it to you that would have never caused me to see this situation as I do, right? And she goes, I don't know. And so I told Ray, I'm sorry, not Ray, but Ron this. I told Bob this, and I even shared it in my congressional report, my comment during the caregiver open period comment. Right, I share this a lot because to me, I don't know who's going to hear this. I don't know how they're going to feel about this, and it sucks being told no. The guys that sucked it up throughout their entire military service, the women too, of course, and they never went to sick call. They never went to any kind of reporting. They never asked for help. They sucked it the fuck up like we were trained to. The culture is that. So how come it doesn't translate? So here's another thing, very easy fix, right? They know you had to drive from your appointment to your house. You showed up. So why isn't there an automatic payment? Right? There's, to me, let's just say, hey, Joey's a little bit slow, guys, but I'm just saying, all right? Round peg, square peg.
But Joey, let me give you an example of something though, because here's where the problem lies with a lot of veterans, because you accept the premise that you should have to drive there. I, under TRICARE, literally stay in my own county, usually within a 15-minute drive, to see the doctor. So when I, under TRICARE, had my gallbladder surgery, I went in, had pain, talked to my local provider, right? Mind you, government funded. Okay. So government funded under VA and government funded under DOD, government funded. And he goes, okay, I think it's this. Tested. Yep. You got gallbladder issues. I'm going to make you a script and we'll schedule you with Dr. So-and-so. And Dr. So-and-so said a couple, just like 2 or 3 days later, I'm in there. He's like, all right, absolutely. Here's your day for surgery. Another like 2 or 3 days later, I was under a knife, had it fixed, was at home resting and recouping. That process at that speed happens all the time under TRICARE. Try to do that under VA healthcare. And it's not going to happen because everything like you just described, the rules, the regulations, and things like that, the levels and hoops that you have to jump for. But again, the Mission Act that we really championed and worked on with the community care program was supposed to say, you have to travel more than an hour for a specialist. No, you do not. No, you do not. And they're supposed to be recommending you that. And I'll give you an example of a young lady. She's a Marine down here in Florida named Stephanie. And Stephanie and I was having a conversation. She was like, hey, she had a health issue. And in that health issue, they said, hey, here's an appointment. The appointment was 2 months away. She's like, well, that's a little long. And this is really a very big concern. I think it was something like a precancerous indicator. Can I move that ahead? And so they gave her like a month and a half out. She goes, because I had talked to her about community care. She goes, well, I heard about this program called community care. Can I get that? Oh, absolutely. And they subsequently gave it to her. So the point of the story is this. They should have offered that the minute they knew the appointment was going to be more than 28 days to see a specialist. They should have offered that. The people, the dental people in Key West, like I told you, instead of driving 4 hours for a 1 hour dental appointment, should automatically, under the law, they're required to do that. But quite often they are intentionally not doing that because they want to make you go in there. And this is why, the law was a good law. The leaders who are leading it were bad leaders. And hopefully going forward, that will change with the new secretary of the VA. But also, there's some new policy coming up that we're working on and we're strongly supporting. I have to tell you, we're going to really move a lot of that. And when you talk about mental health issues, imagine this. There's so many veterans I've talked to and providers as well, that the veteran went to a mental health provider, said, hey, can I just get help now? I don't want to wait anymore on the VA. They would call the VA. The VA is like, nope, you have to have them come see us first. We're working on policy. It's going to change that too. I mean, all of this can change. It can be more like TRICARE. It can be more flexible, but with a caveat. We're not against the VA because, as you demonstrated, there are things that they're specialists in, and there are programs specifically that they should be doing. Right? So
Absolutely.
VA is a must. But if it's able to just stay at your local doctor and be treated like every other American, our value is, if we don't fix that, what's going to happen to America's healthcare in the long term? So that's why we continue to move this towards the for America aspect of healthcare and say, we should have choice. We should be in control of our healthcare. And, with the new Secretary of Veterans Affairs and the new legislation, we feel we're really positioned this year under this Congress to move a lot of good things.
See, and that's really powerful because simple things, right? Simple, small things add up real quick. Okay. And these pressure points are kind of the things that are unspoken, right? In sales, there's always this unspoken no that people are worried about. It's a consuming thing. Like, hey, I don't know how to get this sale. They're telling me this, but it seems like that, right? And serving with Marines, serving with the Army, serving with a lot of different people, I can say that there's this huge cultural divide, that these people are being trained as if you're treating civilians that are malingering pieces of shit that haven't done anything for anything that they're asking for. And I don't mean that towards any jadedness towards a civilian. What I'm saying is you don't get treated like that in a civilian doctor. I've been to civilian doctors, okay? I don't know who's training these people to treat people this way, but I can go down a list and say just the basis of basic knowledge of common practice, right? I'm a complex situation. Okay. I have multiple conditions, all this other crap. They pawned me off because I started complaining too much to Escondido Clinic. They rotated me through 7 different doctors until the doctor that I usually saw didn't even remember who I was. She was my primary care when I joined the VA situation, and then they cycled me around through so many doctors that by the end of it, nobody knew who I was. So I go to this doctor here, Dr. Sharma here in Escondido Clinic. And then they get me all a bunch of tests, neurologies, needles going everywhere, horrible shit. Don't recommend it. Not a good Friday. Not at all. And nobody follows up. And it's like, okay, hold on. Are we just repeating tests and tests and tests and tests and tests? Yeah. Well, how many hundreds of thousands, if not billions of millions of dollars are we losing out on? Because we're not even keeping any kind of consistency in documentation. They were really rigid on what's happened to you in the past 6 months. I'm like, well, I fell. Well, why are you falling? And I'm like, hold on, lady. Let me just go ahead. Look at the record. Let me just shove your face in this real quick.
But Joe, you're making a point that's really important to kind of emphasize on, in contrast to why we want veterans to have choice in the community. So the VA doctor is providing you health care. Okay. My civilian doctor, if he has the choice, wants to make me better so I don't have to see him. There's more than enough patients out there. He doesn't necessarily want to have me come back on a continuing basis for things. But the veterans in the VA healthcare system are not seeing a doctor with an outcome based. So as an example, when I first came out, paratrooper, skinny guy, lots of aches and pains, knees, backs, shoulders, all are out of whack. And I was working, and my coworkers, I was complaining. He goes, well, don't you go to VA? I go, yeah. He goes, well, I mean, what are they doing to you? I talked about the pills that they were giving me. So the pain, take for the pain. He goes, have you gotten physical therapy? I was like, no, I haven't. He goes, did you ask? I says, no. He says, did they offer? Absolutely not. So I made an appointment and went back to the VA, and I says, hey, can I have physical therapy? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. So I get physical therapy. I now know the exercises, so I can go work in the yard, do strenuous labor, and then come back, do stretches, do exercises, do this and that, and have a good night's sleep and not be in pain all day. And that's the difference of you are getting just basically medicine. I, in the civilian sector, am getting healthcare.
Yeah. And I would say that's the biggest comparative to kind of draw two lines. Okay. We're not comparing tomatoes to tomatoes. Or to tomatoes to apples and oranges. Let's go with that one. Shit. I can't even think of the word, right? We are literally comparing the same thing. All right. Well, I
Yeah.
don't know how this is perceived in such a gross, negligent manner on anybody's scope or scale of obligations and responsibilities, because you're right. This isn't my situation is such, I want to say, a if man, if it's not like a hey, look, we're not even doing the simplest of things. Okay, we can't even get this kid that's in these programs, that program, recognized for all this stuff, da 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 da, has 15 years worth of medical history. We can't even get him to see his primary care within 4 months for a severe fall that cracked a tooth. He probably has whatever's going on. His hips hurt. He hadn't get out of bed for 3 weeks. Nothing, not even a nothing. And when I walk into that appointment with that doctor, she introduces herself as if she's never met me before. Hi, I'm this doctor. And I'm like, oh, cool. I know how this is going to go. And then when we talk to her about the basics of my medical history, she goes, what are you talking about? This isn't bad. I have it worse. And I'm like, all right, look, I'm very concerned for your health as a friend and family member of life, okay? In the Lord
Yeah.
of Jesus Christ, let me just be concerned for you, because I couldn't walk for 3 weeks. And if you're coming to work with that much pain, I can only imagine the abuse as an employer, as a contractor, that the VA is giving upon you. Because, my guy, I don't think you should be tolerating that.
Yeah.
And sadly enough, this has happened to me multiple times with providers. And I'm using that a little bit as a sarcasm, right? But it has happened where providers and social workers leave because they cannot mentally handle what the VA does to the employees
Right.
and the patients. It's horrible. And I look at it and I go, so then what is it actually doing with this blinding disregard to their obligation to provide the minimum of standard? Why aren't we recognizing these things? Like you're saying, there's processes and there's systems available. So what's the reasons, right? What's the reason for the gatekeeping? Why you bring up policy and inference, and I want to throw in shareholders and groups and committees, and I go, it's important to have all of those people in a room and say, what are you guys doing? Okay,
Yeah.
like what are we doing? Because if Joey can chalk it up with Jimmy for a bit and say, hey, this is a very simplistic thing. And I shared Bob a nice little letter about it too. Like, hey, this is very simple stuff, right? If you can't maintain any kind of continuity of care on basic primary care, why would I ever entrust you with the complexity of specialty care?
Yeah.
This is where I do want to attack the VA on dime for dollar, because, hey, if you can't legitimize the most basic, why are you asking for the most grandiose? Like Eli Crane and a few other guys, they're asking for psychedelics. And I'm like, okay, you're going to line your partner's pockets. I already know the players. Okay, you're going to line pockets everywhere left and right that you already have nets and webs tied into. I can see it coming from a mile away. What I can say is we still can't get basic people, basic things. Why and how dare we consume a budget that we could then redirect? And, Elon's going on and on and on about this Doge shit. And I'm like, listen, if you want to give anything effort that's actually going to make a difference, pay attention to the Veterans Affair. Have you noticed that that's not the one they've touched yet? And I go, why? Because everybody's making money off of our back. Everybody is.
I tell you, I think it's on the list to do, same as the military and others. But I think they're going with the easy stuff first, for lack of a better example, because they also
Build up
haven't gotten into
momentum.
absolutely learn your technique, build up your momentum, and move on. But going into that, man, when you talk about the cost and the values and the beliefs of what it's supposed to be, the VA is supposed to have one mission, and that is to provide quality health care for the veterans. And part of that should be to have an outcome to make them healthy as much as capable. But I'm telling you, as a disabled veteran who has both VA care and TRICARE, the process for me to go to my local clinic over having to go to the VA clinic. So as an example, for me to get an x-ray on my knee or something like that, right? Or my shoulder or my back, whatever's hurting at that time, the VA will allow me to, it's open. It's a walk-in thing. Just go on up there. It's 45-minute drive. No big deal. I have medical imaging that is 10 minutes away. But the VA says, hey, no problem. We have it here for you. Go up there and do it. Why not just go to the local doctor? Because the VA wants you in the VA healthcare system. It's not what's best for the VA. It's supposed to be what's best for the veteran. That's why the change in policy that we're coming up with, that we've been working on. So as an example, you can't just reach into the VA and schedule an appointment with a doctor, but you see apps with an old woman looking at doctors and scheduling appointments with these apps.
Yep. And they get ratings too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I love that, especially for the VA.
They wouldn't have anybody at work the next day.
Well, our key legislation that we're working on has that they're supposed to create a online self-scheduling portal. And again, it's not like it's this crazy magic scientist stuff. It's what they're already doing for other Americans. So they're advertising that old lady can pick up a cell phone and look at some cute doctor and pick that doctor, right? Why can't we have veterans who were smart enough to lead troops in battle, who can probably pick up the cell phone? I can tell you, I've worked with people who are like 80, 90 years old, who are veterans from Korea and stuff like that. And one gentleman was 91. He was one of the first black paratroopers with the triple nickel. And I'm at an event with him, and he goes, hold on a second. He goes on his phone. I got to do this, and does a post, types it in and everything. I'm like, this guy's 91. He handles his cell phone better than I do. Why not allow the veterans the same ability to do those kind of things? And I can tell you, I can do that with my civilian doctor through TRICARE. What is it about the VA that it can't do that simple things? They can't handle the electronic health records and so much more. So this legislation is going to say you will do this. And with the new Secretary of VA, we feel very successful that once this legislation is passed, this legislation will allow that kind of healthcare to start happening. And once that happens, I think you're going to see quicker patients able to see a doctor quicker through the education aspect of this bill. So let me back up. The bill is called Veterans Access Act. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly what the access acronym stands for. It's a bunch of words. It's access basically to healthcare, right? So this legislation is going to lock in the wait time for the access standard time. So the access standards as they are right now can be changed by the VA if it so chooses someday. It will make it a law so they can't change it, right? So your current access standards. Then it's going to allow for a pilot program for those people who either have mental health issues or drug and alcohol issues. You would basically be able to go to anybody and get care. It would be just walk in and get it. It wouldn't be like the VA. It's not like, hey, I have to ask the VA. Nope, it's a pilot program, and you would be able to just simply move into a facility and get taken care of. Then there's the self-scheduling like I talked about. And then there's also, for those who are applying for claims, there's usually a deadline. It would extend not only the deadline for claims, but it would extend the deadlines for doctors to be able to get their reimbursement. Because what you find is in the civilian sector, the doctors who are working with community care have told me, well, if I make a mistake, it goes back and forth, and then it's too late. It's taking too long. I don't get reimbursed. So that would also extend their ability to make sure they get reimbursed. That helps doctors stay in the community care. And there's some other good pieces in this legislation. And this is the key to it, though. Everything we talked about, our life experiences, taught us to be men and women of action from the military. And in that, to provide answers of what good looks like. We don't walk. The mission isn't that first step into the woods or when the ship leads the dock. It's when it's in the middle of everything. And that's what you work towards the answer, to come out at the other end of the objective, other end of the battle, successful. And that's what Concerned Veterans for America has been doing. And look, we do that in healthcare. And right now our priority is the Veterans Access Act, but we're working on foreign policy. And right now we're very proud that they're talking about pulling troops out of Syria because not our country, not our fight. Let's get the hell out of there. We're looking at now with, the taxes, because that's our money and government should be taking it. I mean, so many other things that we work on that is beneficial for America. But when you look at healthcare, it's like you start at this win. We got to get this bill. We get this bill, and then we move on to the next thing and gain more wins and more victories. And CVA, Concerned Veterans for America, is just like this incredibly huge answer-driven group of veterans that don't care about fame or glory. They want to win the battle.
That is so amazing to hear. And honestly, it's refreshing because there's been a lot of issues in the community, right? We can say without being nitpicky or pointing fingers, right? We can all be doing better. And that's what I am excited. You bring up, the new guy, Director Collins, right? And this is the moment for us to leverage the executive office because the VA doesn't need a wait around. We saw that with Biden, with abortions and other things like processing financial things for non-veterans, which was very pain point for me to see. Now, what I'm saying is if the availability of a wave of a pen could be addressing specific things, and I mean it, that it is a very minimal things. My course of action is always, hey, do things lightly, right? Light touches, right? Light corrections are usually in the highway. You're going super duper fast. You want to do light touches, okay? Now, in certain parameters, though, when you're talking about whole systems and the lack of observation obligations to the outcome, right? This is where I find it more debilitating to even participate in. And like, I had to write my doctor and say, look, I can't step foot in a VA anymore without shaking, okay? Because I'm terrified about what's happening. Yeah. I am more afraid of the VA than the terrorists that were shooting mortars and rockets and at us the whole 9 months, wherever we were at, doing whatever we were doing. And the reason why is because they get a smile on my face and say, thank you for your service, after they bend me over a barrel and pretend like I'm a criminal for 15 years. And I go, and that's the biggest problem and gripe I have is when we have the word legislation, right? But we have CFR code. So you're bringing up a lot of good keywords for us to focus in on, kind of wrap up our great conversation we're having. What ways can people participate to really get involved with CV4A? Now that's something I'm going to throw in for sure because concerned veteran for America, because I see it as an important thing, right? And I talk to a lot of people on the show about this, especially in California, about infrastructure and structure and things that develop and then delegate for that next generation, right? Real, true people that have altruism in their heart and earnestly seeking a better path, right? They plant trees for the shade to cover their grandchildren, okay, not themselves. And in the works that we're seeing lately, every turn of the page, there's tons of nonprofits that I honestly believe need a course direction. There's a ton of different organizations and leadership qualities that I see a huge course correction. If somebody were to say one thing, I would say, dude, leverage the shit out of the executive branch like you can. And it has been, because now you're not just talking and trumping it up, not to say his name, right? But you're not just selling yourself for a candidacy. You're not just running a race, and he's got no more races to run. Okay, this is a J.D. Vance legacy that we really need to be pushing, because him being a Marine Corps veteran, him having that war experience, if he doesn't, my optics on that is you'll never get my vote. I don't care who you are, what you're doing. I am so biased now in my dollars spent, my pennies spent, my options of clicking. Every single thing I see and do and touch, I'm restrictive. Because here's something that COVID taught us, and I'm going to say this very loud for the entire room to hear. If you don't show up, they can't do anything. If you don't show up, you will shut down the entirety of whatever it is you're talking about, including this nation. So it doesn't matter if these people want to listen to you or not. It doesn't matter if society agrees with what your sacrifice was about, because that's coming. That's coming. A lot of people are talking about it and saying, hey, did we even fight a real war? What was the reasons? Am I really the bad guy? And now we have to talk about moral injury, PTSD, and a lot of other things. But the central focus is, how do we provide the basis of our basic obligations to those whom served? It's a never-ending cycle of, again, like I believe another gentleman talked about it, is greed, ego, and fallacy. We believe in the wrong things to be the effective reason and logical outcome of what we do. Our inputs and outputs aren't matching up. So our equation needs to start getting fixed. If we know the outcome, good, like TRICARE, shit, you said it 15 times a day.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if we get people that are 100% or 100% PNT, if we can lighten the load of this, if we do the percentage and claims differently, if we actually observe these people coming out of military service honorably, okay? And I'm not saying that as a caveat. I'm saying, look, there's already distinction regardless thereof. Then why is everything so adversarial? Even asking a social worker for help. I'm like, dude, I can't show up to your office because what if you're trying to make me feel this way or that just to get me to snap? Like, there's this thing that the VA actually has. It's behavioral health, whatever log.
Yes,
And
the red flags.
Yup. I've heard horror stories about that stuff. And I've had experiences where I'm talking to my provider. This is another one in Mission Valley, Dr. Chang. You know who you are, right? He got scared. And I'm like, hey, look, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just talking to you. I'm telling you, hey, what you're doing isn't effective. We need to get it on the right trajectory, da-da-da-da-da. He pushes a button, I guess, and this man with the gun on his hip, and he's got it half out, is looking at me like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Shit. What is going on? Well, you know, this, and this. And before you know it, I have two options. Okay, I am the bigger animal. Okay, I can do a lot of different things here. But the smart thing is, no, I'm just going to cry. I'm just going to start crying. And that's what I did. I cried like a little bitch, and it saved my life. And afterwards, though, what I learned was the doctor didn't even document what I was complaining about. He didn't even document that the guard came in with his gun half drawn. All he documented was that I had a recording device because, again, it's a $500 recording device. I was going to audio tech school. Audio engineering, sorry. And I should have pushed record because then his legitimization of concern even documented in my medical record, that of which he didn't even document anything else, right? Clearly, there's this bias of whatever these people are being trained within PowerPoint presentations, conventions, and we all know it because that's how the opiate pandemic was created, by people manipulating people's self-interests, okay? And now real patients are sadly enough paying the price. And here we are now in the midst of this fentanyl pandemic or whatever they're going to call it to leverage some kind of whatever social action. What I'm saying is, if we go back to the basics, treating people like human beings, having genuine care for our patients, this is the depth of change that I really am so fucking excited to bring about with you, Jimmie, and everybody else that's listening. Because with CV4A, I see that, not again, because I can't just say it's, me and the veterans, we got to take care of it. I'm like, no, I fucking feel like an asshole saying that, because the truth is, God forbid, and this is something the VA tells me all the time, you go to a private practice, they're even worse. And I go, I don't know if that's valid. And I hadn't been able to until December 31st last year was the first time I went to a private doctor in so many years, and I used Medicare. I was terrified to use Medicare because I don't know how to use it, okay? And I used it, and all of a sudden the lady didn't document it in the private practice, and now I have a $900 bill and all this headache, and I'm like, okay, my wife has to calm me down, show me the ropes and all this stuff, and I go, I don't even want to go see private practice. I told her I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to go to Mexico. I'm going to have them print everything in Spanish. And then when somebody doesn't recognize it, I'm going to say racism. And then everybody's going to go nuts because I'm going, that's the definition of it. You're not even looking at me as a human being, Yeah. And this is the funnier part, right? Is where we look at it as, I have to bring levity to every situation. Okay. Right. The darkness will win if you don't.
That's our military humor.
Yeah. And so for you, the next steps with CV4A, right, in the trajectory of these policies and reformations, legislation, participation, right? And that sounds like a rap song anyway. When you look at the CFR codes, how are you guys going about it to educate not just the veteran community, but at the end of the day, the civilian community, that these type of optics these restraints within the CFR code do replicate, and vice versa. Like the caregiver program, which was never intended to replicate the federal programs or state programs of caregivers. It was intended by Congress to be a specialized program for the post 9/11 era and generation of injuries and combatants that we saw that needed a specific thing. And this is like CFR code. This is not me, fucking imagining thing, all right? Imagination. No, that's not me. What I'm saying is, after years and years and years of all of this, right, I've noticed that CFR code doesn't mean shit. Right. Like laws don't mean shit to these people. What means everything. and this is a peculiar word I only learned after doing a huge journalistic investigation on the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, the American Red Cross, the Wounded Warrior Project, and there was 3 other actors that I will withhold the name until I can verify certain journalistic things. But what I can say is the interesting talking point is the word shareholders. Now, how do you become one of those guys? Because I'd love to be able to do that whirl and have people that I know, just in there being considered above all else, veteran needs and things that make sense. Like Jimmie was saying, guys, literally TRICARE. All of these people, for some reason, they don't care about law. They don't care about CFR code. They don't care about legislation. What they care about is their shareholders' perspective of their margins. So you've been through it. You've served in the House, you've served at local levels, you've seen it, I've seen it in the community boards here, the cemetery board, the planning group, all this stuff. I've seen it routinely where the actual drive and interest is these random, unspoken, unheard of voices and names called shareholders. Yeah. So how do we affect something then if that's kind of what we're looking at?
Well, first and foremost, let's identify something that's really important. Everything that you described that you went through, and the fact that there are veterans committing suicide on the grounds of VA clinics, you don't ever hear in the community that gets TRICARE, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody that I know of in TRICARE has ever committed suicide for lack of access to care or the way they were treated by the VA. Nobody I know who ever went to TRICARE has ever been red flagged and told they can't go see the doctor unless they see security first, right? So there's 2 completely different worlds. So picture that first and foremost. Second thing is there's a challenge within the veterans community specifically. So many times where I've told about nightmares and all of these things, the veteran has said to me, well, I get great care. And my answer is, but don't you want everybody else to get equally that great care? Mm-hmm. So we have to, 1, recognize the system is broken and there is a good alternative, which is allowing access in the community. And sorry to hear that you are having to deal with the pay thing, but you didn't mention whether the care was actually good, timely, treated you respectfully, right? Because most of the people who go in the civilian sector are treated actually as heroes, or at least as just another patient, not as a broken veteran in the VA.
What you said does hit so hard, though, that little caveat to humanity, right? I can tell you, I have been treated more ruthlessly and disrespectfully and absolutely minimized and disregarded by the VA, mostly women doctors, okay? I'm not trying to point a finger, but I'm not saying that, the certain optics about women and men relationships not playing a role. Even when I was in the military, the doctor that scanned my wife's or firstborn, I was like, yeah, we have a boy. I'm the last Martinez in our family. Okay, it's very important to have a boy. Yeah. I get excited. She turns to me with a frown and angry, going, would you be this excited if it was a girl? And this is kind of the path I've lived, where it's routinely those occurrences that people look at me and be like, yo, doc, she legit says she's got it worse as she walked in. And I was like, yeah. And that's unique. So right there, you said it on the head, right on the head. Mutual respect and understanding as a human, right? Like, I'm not just a man, I'm a human. So I appreciate what you said there. To let you finish off, I just always had to hit that point.
No, I appreciate it, because this is what I'm getting under TRICARE out in the community. And this is what I hear with people who go to community care out there. It might be the bureaucratic issues that are challenging, might be the VA delaying you to get that community care. But in general, more veterans are asking for more community care. Obviously, veterans like community care, right? So part of what we have done to successfully move from addressing the issue in 2014 to the choice program to the VA Mission Act and community care program, and what we're doing right now is what we do as an organization is we provide answers, but answers are no good unless people hear the answers. So here's what we do. We have millions of people that we have engaged with across the nation. You've seen me do things on my social media alone where I'm engaging across the nation. And I get, this is how you and I met, right? Engaging on the issues, talking about the issues. So we're raising the education. I threw out the petition. I said, hey, here's a petition. And that's another way we do. We give those people the ability to have a voice in the process. So as an example, if we send, and I can tell you as a former legislature, if we send 1,000,000 petitions divided up across the various members of Congress that they need to support the Veterans Access Act, they're going to notice. They absolutely will. It's like your staff gets there in the morning, their email is filled with, here's my petition from members in your district, right? Because go to your member of Congress. That says something, because nobody in DC can get them reelected because nobody votes for them. It's all the people back home. And that's the secret sauce. We give veterans, through a coordinated effort, the voice in the process to truly make a difference. And we have been massively successful. Now, as an example, we talked a little bit about, the coming out of Syria and ending endless wars, and why are we over there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We are a major reason we came out of Afghanistan. Now, the people who did it screwed it up completely and still have not yet been truly held accountable for it. But we had both President Trump and President Biden agreeing that that's not our fight. We shouldn't be there, because we are a group of veterans who engage veterans, their family members, friends, anybody who wants to join a fight to make America better, right? Concerned Veterans for America. If you want to make America better, we're going to provide you a tool. Now, we can't do everything. We don't cover every issue, right? But we're going to tell you right now, for those people who want to get involved, who are watching this or will watch it, they can go to Concerned Veterans for America's webpage, which is simply CV4A.org. So Charlie Victor, 4 alpha.org. Go into the take action section, right? So when you come up to the homepage, take action, go into there. The very first thing will be a petition that they can click on, fill out that information. That information will go to your member of Congress. You just told your member of Congress in a unified manner with thousands and thousands of people, because that's where we're at right now. We're just really starting to dive deep on getting this bill moving forward, and it will make a difference. You'll find that is where we bring a voice to veterans to make America more freer and more secure, by taking the most trusted demographic, the veterans. Let them lead the issues and bring other Americans in. And basically, we can help you have a voice in making a difference and making America more freer and more secure.
That's so powerful, brother. I appreciate it so much. Not just the mission and messaging, but the purpose, the sense of continuing service, right? We've had a beautiful conversation today. We kind of went in full circle about how we got here, where we're from, and touch bases on some personal experiences where it really highlights those needed attentions, and in a way where leadership can't dodge the responsibility. And that's something that I find powerful with CV4A. That's CV4A.com or .org. My bad.
.org.
CV 4 a.org, people.
Right.
Don't use the .com one. You probably won't like what they put out anyways. What I'm saying is, it's a beautiful time to really look at things in a different aspect and perspective. And as much as it does, my experience wasn't great. I'm not going to say it was great in any way, shape, or form, because I would say I'd be minimizing it just to make sure I have a smile on other people's face. And that's not the life I'm trying to continue living for these next 15 years. It's been a 15-year period, and I was literally talking to my buddy today, Steven, about doing the Veteran Comic-Con out in San Francisco, tying it with Podomatic.com. If you're ever interested in podcasting, people, check out Podomatic.com. I'm going to hit you up with that too, Jimmy. There's a lot of things that are going on in the world for veterans, and other than veterans, Americans, right? It's a new age. It's a new dawn. There's a lot of great things going on, a lot of great opinions, things that you can get engaged with. Petitions. Remember, Concerned Veterans for America isn't just for veterans, folks. I got confused too. Okay. But it's for America and Americans. And there's going to be a lot more conversations, especially with Jimmie and I guarantee it. If it's not about cigars, it'll probably be about geopolitics in Mexico. And I got lots of opinions. And I love that you have this great ability to not just convey that mission and message that CV4A is on, but the construct and context of what genuine leadership is, right? I'm not here for me. I'm not here for you. I'm here for we. And as much as that doesn't make sense, it does, because when you're more worried about the person left and right to you than yourself, and you don't put yourself on that pedestal, that's something that I find beautiful in genuine leadership, right? There's a saying, true leaders eat last. And
Yes.
I've noticed that in a feast or famine, that aspect of leadership really kind of highlights genuine, true people, their character, their morality, their integrity, their rapport, trust, and love and support for the community. And if we can't get back to looking at that through that lens of renewed inspiration, right? And a glimpse of what we can be doing, because it's just been I'm not saying that Donald Trump's new position, the inauguration, things have changed. It has, but when we're talking about a specific thing, the executive branch, the VA, we have the moment. Let's take the momentum, get that petition for a CV4A to check them out. The petitions that they do, take action on the website. Jimmie broke it down for us, right? And at the end of the day, we can all be doing better. So, Jimmie, do you have any last words for us, for our listeners and our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I know many of us feel this way. When I joined the military as a young man, I truly want to just serve America. I want to join the military, keep America safe and secure. And I had no more want than to be able to live the American dream of serving my nation. When we come out of the military, we kind of feel we lose that aspect. So one of the things I'll suggest is, as a member of CVA, every day, I once again have the ability to get up and serve America. So when you're joining with Concerned Veterans for America, it's another opportunity to literally put on your I'm going to serve America phase again. So even if you're old like me and can't do a lot of physical things, you can be a keyboard warrior. You can call into your member of Congress. You can do those things. And like you were describing, and the reason to do it is because when you're in that foxhole waiting for the bad guys, the most important person in that foxhole isn't you. It's the other guy that has your back. And it's him knowing that you have his back. So if you want to really, truly serve America, think like we do at Concerned Veterans for America, then join with us, get on board, go to our website, follow us at Twitter at Concerned Vets, on Instagram at Concerned Vets, on Facebook at Concerned Veterans for America. We're loud, we're energetic, and we are for America.
Beautiful, beautiful. Again, folks, thank you so much for your time, Jimmie. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to having you on soon again.